Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 2, Episode 26, entitled The Jem'Hadar. This episode aired June 12th, 1994. Before we start on this one, anything to correct from the previous episode, which was Tribunal?
No, it was perfect.
That episode was really good. We learned about the Cardassians, and also I felt like we revealed how vulnerable we are out here on this station. Like, there's nobody around. Everybody just seems to attack us first.
Right, and the Federation clearly stands up for its principles.
Yeah. Does it?
And and when its citizens are kidnapped by the Cardassians, it writes a strongly worded letter.
Oh my god. Okay, well, should we start on this one?
I don't see why not. The last one of the season, in fact.
That's right. In the cold open, Sweet Jake is doing a science project for school that involves growing Bajoran caterpods. Sisko is not impressed with this lesson and asks him if he could do any science project, what would it be? And Jake says he wants to know how to pilot a runabout. That's my favorite thing that he says in this whole episode.
Can I drive the family car, Dad?
Sisko's like, it's not exactly a science project. So they settle on him doing a planetary visit in the Gamma Quadrant.
That's even more exciting.
Sisko says it would be like a working vacation. And then they hug because they're so cute.
That is another adorable Jake and his father scene. And it's very cute that Jake is such a teenager. Can I drive the car?
That was funny.
I am surprised, though, that Sisko isn't encouraging Jake to learn how to pilot a shuttle, or maybe he thinks he's just too young, or maybe there's an aspect of he doesn't want his son growing up too fast.
Well, I think he probably does think he's too young, and I think the reason they put that in there was for the reason you said. They're making a joke on him wanting to drive the family car.
Yeah.
So I don't think he really has strong feelings about him not learning to pilot one, but it's definitely not a science experiment.
Yeah, because at his age, Kira was killing Cardassians.
Well, he doesn't want Jake to grow up that quickly or in that way.
I know, I think Kira's a great role model.
Well, maybe now. Now we go to Sisko's office and he's telling Kira and Dax how excited Jake is for their trip. Then they talk about the starship, the Odyssey, that will be at the station in a few days. And Sisko says it's too bad he'll miss Dax's reunion with Captain Kehoe. Dax thinks he's a little arrogant, and Sisko thinks that's pretty funny because Captain Kehoe says the same thing about her. And Jake comes in and he's all excited because he invited Nog to come along on their trip. Sisko is not thrilled with this idea, but Jake is worried that if Nog doesn't do well in the science project, he'll drop out of school, and he really wants to help his friend. So, of course, Sisko gives in.
I think Sisko doesn't like Nog because he sees him as a bad influence on Jake.
Well, he is a bad influence on Jake.
Well, only because of his upbringing.
Well,
I think Jake's more of a positive influence on Nog.
Of course he is, but that doesn't change the fact that he's a bad influence. Yes, maybe it's because his parents are bad or whatever, but he's still a bad influence.
But I think Sisko could look at it as Jake is actually a positive influence on Nog and is making him be a better person.
Well, he has seen that when he caught Jake teaching him how to read.
Yeah.
So he has definitely seen that, and I think he tolerates it because of that. But remember, he looks at Nog not just as a Ferengi, but as an older kid.
Oh, okay.
And I don't think he likes that influence on Jake because he's always teaching Jake about girls and things that, if your kid is going to learn about girls, you do not want them learning it from a Ferengi. Let's just be clear. This is the wrong group.
Yeah. To paraphrase Sisko earlier in the season, I'll have to undo the damage Nog's done.
Right. About girls, right?
Yeah.
In Quark's, Morn is apparently depressed, and Quark is telling him to open up until he sees Odo walk by, and then he runs off, and he runs up to Odo and asks what Sisko thinks of his idea of using the monitors throughout the station to sell merchandise. Sisko said no, of course, and Odo says, maybe it's because he doesn't like you. And Quark says, don't be ridiculous. Major Kira doesn't like me, not Sisko. And then Quark asks what he can do to change Sisko's mind, and Odo just scoffs and leaves.
That seems about right for Quark, trying to use station resources to line his own pockets.
Yeah, he's trying to set up QVC on the station.
That would be pretty scary.
Well, the Q could stand for Quark. Quark's value channel.
Except there's not a lot of value.
No. Then Nog rushes up to Quark, telling him he's going to the Gamma Quadrant with Jake and his father. Well, Quark says, seeing an opportunity, how lucky for you. And then we see poor Morn still sitting at the bar with nobody to talk to, and we cue the theme song.
Well, it was nice to see Morn.
Yes.
It makes it a good episode if Morn's in it.
Yeah, I need to get the data about which episodes Morn was in for our season wrap-up next week so that we can evaluate whether or not it's true that Morn is only in the good episodes.
You can evaluate my hypothesis.
Yeah, okay. I don't think it's true. Now we're in the runabout, and Nog rushes in saying he's always wanted to see the cockpit. He asks Jake how to fire the phasers, which, oops. Jake, by the way, in this scene, you see that he's nearly twice as tall as Nog.
He is a big guy.
He is, and he's so skinny, so it's funny. He's very lanky.
Yes.
When Sisko comes in and they send Nog to the back, Sisko is not thrilled to have overheard the phasers comment.
Of course.
Jake assures him this will be a great trip, even though Nog is along. And then in comes Quark, who's decided to go along because his nephew needs proper supervision. Sisko tries to push him off, but Quark does not give up, and he guilts him a bit. And then Jake says, please. And Sisko kind of laughs at the absurdity of it and says, let's get going before anyone else shows up.
That is funny. The way Sisko is amused by the absurdity
laughing,
of it. Sort of, why not? But surely that would be a Federation goal. Bridging those gaps between cultures, finding the common ground. Wouldn't this be something you could try, even if Quark is doing it for the wrong reasons, to try and get benefit and to try and talk Sisko into letting him use the monitors? It's still a cultural exchange.
But I think the point is, Sisko wanted this to be a vacation. He used the word a couple of times. And so I'm not sure he wants to be doing Federation business.
Right. I see what you mean, yeah.
Or trying to extend the Federation agenda on his vacation.
But at the same time, it's supposed to be work for Jake.
Well, a science project.
Yeah, I can see how he wanted personal time with his son, but it's become something bigger. Use it for an opportunity. Humans and Ferengis don't get on. Perhaps there's a bigger picture here.
Gosh, you're an upbeat lady.
Thank you.
I don't know. I look at this as somebody horning in on my vacation, which has happened before.
Yes.
So I don't like it. Should have locked the door as soon as they got on. Shut the door behind him and latched it.
Oh, Quark, could you cast off the mooring clamps? Oops, the shuttle was on autopilot. Nothing I could do. He got left behind.
Totally. I bet he'll do that next time.
Oh, yeah.
But we show the runabout going through the wormhole, and then we are walking through a wooded area on a planet. Sisko tells us this planet is a lot like Earth during the early Devonian period, which was apparently hundreds of millions of years ago, which is a very Ross Geller fact. That's what I put in my notes.
So it's a teaching moment.
Well, yes, to people who don't necessarily want to learn. There's a lot of plant life, fish, some insects, but no predators or large animals, which is convenient. Quark complains that it's wasted resources. Nature decays, but latinum lasts forever. Rule of Acquisition 102.
Yes, and he congratulated Nog for knowing which number it was.
Oh, right. I do feel like I should take a second to talk about their civilian clothes here. Quark's is the weirdest. He's wearing this sort of lime green tunic with a weird sort of vest, and it's very oversized, and it looks kind of terrible. He's normally so well fitted, but everyone else's outfit is pretty nondescript, but Quark, as usual, stands out.
He has the best tailor.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
Well, all the Ferengi are now using Garrick's tailor's shop.
Clothiers,
yes. I must get it right.
Sisko tries to get Quark to return to the runabout since he's so uncomfortable in nature, but Quark really wants to hang out with Sisko, of course. Later, he's putting some green ointment on his ears because he's allergic to nature. He complains about the insects and the stench of the flowers. I have to say, this may be the only time Quark and I have anything in common because I'm not an outdoors person either. Although I can appreciate the beauty of nature, I just don't always want to sit in it.
Yes, that's kind of funny because that's exactly what I was thinking watching this scene. It's like, it's like Kim's view on camping.
Yes.
I like to see nature, but I don't actually like to sleep or live in it.
Yeah, totally. I'll happily take pictures of it, even hike through it, but I don't want to have a meal while sitting under a tree with bugs everywhere. And the sun and everything. Yeah, it's not for me.
It also kind of fits with Quark.
Apparently so. But when Quark and Sisko are alone, Quark gets the idea of selling things on the monitors shot down again. Sisko laughs, and he goes to check on the boys who are working on their science project. He tells them to stop for the night because he's about to make jambalaya. Nog seems to like his dinner, saying he's getting a taste for human food. I think he's trying really hard to be a friend to Jake and to impress Sisko. Yeah. But Quark complains that there's dirt and bugs in his food. This is where I thought, okay, Quark and I have something in common. This was the moment when I related to him for the first time ever in the history of this show. Sisko said he thought the Ferengi liked eating bugs, but Quark says only Ferengi bugs. He's very whiny about everything, which again is pretty much how I would be if I got dragged into camping. But the difference is he volunteered and he wanted to go, and then he's complaining. If I had done that and volunteered and wanted to go, I would not complain. I would only complain to myself and maybe write a terrible story about it later, but I would not complain if I invited myself on the trip.
Yeah, if you'd volunteered for it, it would be a different story.
Totally. Jake and Sisko then talk about a camping trip they took when Jake's mom was still alive, and Sisko says, we should get away more often, and Jake says, I'm ready whenever you are, and I'm sure Nog is too, which makes them both laugh. It's very cute. They're just adorable.
It's kind of funny just how idealized this relationship is.
I don't know. It doesn't feel unrealistic to me. It feels relatively realistic. Jake might be a little bit too nice and staying out of trouble a little bit too much, but I don't know. He reminds me of a kid I used to know who's now an adult.
That's true. It's like, wow, that's so unlike me.
Yeah, well, part of it is he really does rely on his dad, and his dad is available to him and a good father. So that works. And that's not always the thing that we would see out in real life.
Yeah.
One of those things would maybe not be true. But in this case, with both of them together, I buy this relationship, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I guess this is the side of a show that is dark and has more of a negative tone than previous Star Treks. This is the TNG aspect of it, of the relationship of these two, is that idealized future human.
But maybe that's why I like it. Like you said, if it's more like TNG, that is the world I'm happier in.
Oh, yeah, I don't dislike it. I like this as a reminder of the sort of the positiveness of Star Trek.
Right. Well, then we hear Quark screeching as he has somehow set his arm on fire. Sisko puts it out and tells him to chill out. Quark is ruining this trip for Nog, who runs off upset. Jake runs after him, and then Quark starts blaming Sisko for everything, saying he doesn't really like the Ferengi, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. That whole thing was annoying.
Nobody likes the Ferengi.
Right. Well, just then a woman with very large ears that just go up the side of her head and like into her hair. It's very strange.
I think it's a great look.
It's very effective. She takes a deep breath, and then a blue circle of light appears in front of her, and she seems to throw it at Sisko, knocking him over. She asks how many of the Jem'Hadar there are, but Sisko and Quark have no idea what she's talking about. And then a bunch of soldier-looking dudes seem to appear out of nowhere with a Predator-like effect around them.
They have personal cloaking devices. It's the Predator.
And these guys look a little bit like Tosk from season 1.
Yeah.
Just in terms of the way that they look.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe they're distant relatives, although they seem a little bit smarter or a little bit more world weary.
Yes.
Well, Quark says, this has not been a good day. And then we go into an ad break.
It was a little bit camping trip tropey, this sort of a whole introduction.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed a little forced. I wasn't a real fan of that.
The part where it's the four of them around the campfire?
Yes.
I wonder why. What about that?
I felt it was just a little bit too cheesy. It felt like a sort of a cheap episode to this point.
Have you ever been camping?
Yes.
It reminded me of camping.
I guess my camping experiences were more positive.
Oh, I didn't think it was negative.
Yeah.
You mean, well, I guess Quark started his arm on fire.
I felt it was more like a Chevy Chase movie.
I see. A parody of it almost, rather than, okay, I gotcha.
And I didn't think that really fitted this show. I see what they were trying to get at and some of the things they wanted to do in this scene or in the, this whole run up, but I felt it just came off as sort of meh.
I don't know. To me, it was no different than when Bareil was on the station and he and Kira were having dinner together and talking about playing spring ball or whatever it was. It just felt like that. They're not always great in Star Trek doing the stuff that's not part of the missions or part of the science.
Yeah.
When they just try to do so-called normal things, it does tend to feel a little bit clunky.
Right. That's the best word for it.
Well, Jake and Nog return to the campsite to find that Quark and Sisko are now missing. Jake notices the boot prints in the sand, very astute. Nog suggests that they beam up to the runabout right away, but Jake says we need to track them with the tricorder, and so off they go.
I think it's that Ferengi sense of bravery kicking in. Let's run away. Run away.
Let's run away as fast as we can.
Yes.
Now we see Sisko, Quark, and the earwoman inside of a purple circle of light in a dark cave. Quark is shouting for someone to bring him food and water. The woman is covering her ears to block out the noise. Sisko tells him to shut up, but he says he has the right to express himself. So this woman's name is Eris, and Eris is played by a woman named Molly Hagan, another recognizable guest star with over 150 credits on IMDb.
Oh, yeah.
She's been in many recent shows, including iZombie, but back in the 90s, she was in Seinfeld, Columbo, Murder, She Wrote, all the standards.
It's funny how so many of these actors, you look at their resume and they're in like a couple of episodes of like everything you can think of.
Right. Yeah. Also, she has a very innocent face. Like, to me, she has a 90s sitcom face.
Oh, yeah.
Which is maybe why Sisko and Quark immediately seem to take her story at face value.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, that was a terrible pun, which I don't like to make. That was an accident.
Penalty. Unnecessary pun.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Let's just move on. Let's put that behind us.
I'm glad you faced up to that.
Oh my gosh. Oh, and then you did it again. You're terrible.
What?
Sisko hopes Nog and Jake stay out of sight, but he assumes Jake is looking for them. Sisko is looking at the security field when the woman says, "Don't touch it because it will kill you." So this woman's name is Eris, and she tells them that the Jem'Hadar are the most feared soldiers in the Dominion.
Yeah, she seems pretty surprised Sisko has not heard of the Jem'Hadar.
She's definitely surprised. She tells a story about her world, Kuril Prime. They were offered entry into the Dominion because of the telekinetic powers of her people. But when they refused the offer, the Jem'Hadar were sent in. They executed their leaders and seized control of the entire planet.
If you have something the Dominion wants, then they come and take it, by negotiation or by force. Ooh.
Right. She has a collar around her neck that she says they used to suppress her telekinetic abilities. Without it, she could probably break through the barrier. Sisko says they'll need to find a way to get it off. He also says the Jem'Hadar are too confident. They aren't really watching them. So if they can get through the barrier, he's sure they can get to safety.
So what I thought was interesting here is how Sisko seems to have been keeping a tactical eye on his surroundings. What do they call it? Situational awareness?
Mm-hmm.
He's noticed how many guards they are, how often they check on them, all these sort of things.
Yeah, meanwhile, Quark is just constantly shouting.
Well, Quark is terrified.
Yeah, right.
But we do get to hear a lot about the Dominion. We've had the hints before, like in the hologram episode, how the Dominion will take control and change planets. That was what the guy was complaining about. And here,
right,
she's saying that the Dominion will take over by force if you refuse their offer.
Right. Nog and Jake have found the cave being guarded by the Jem'Hadar, though they don't really know what to do. I like when Jake suggests that they should get closer, and Nog says he doesn't think they'll look any friendlier up close.
Yes.
That's a good line.
We've seen this before, where Jake is the one pushing to move forward, and Nog is the one sort of holding back of like, what are we doing?
Right. We go back into the cave, and Quark continues shouting for help. Eris says, when we escape, do we have to take him with us? So she's already figured him out.
Oh, yeah.
One of the Jem'Hadar soldiers comes in to shut Quark up, and Sisko starts questioning him. The soldier says he's following the orders of the Founders, who created the Dominion. Maybe most importantly, he says the Dominion isn't going to allow ships from the other side to violate their territory anymore.
Oh.
Which is a little scary, since there's an entire Bajoran colony on this side now.
And this is important. This is the first mention of the Founders.
Right.
I don't think we've heard that before, have we?
No, I don't know what that is. When Sisko asks to talk to the Founders, Eris says they're a myth and they don't really exist. And the soldier's like, they do too exist, like Santa Claus. And then he says he was hoping the first race he would meet from the other quadrant would be a Klingon or a Cardassian. He asks about the Cardassian treaty, saying that seems like a tactical error. He says they gain more knowledge about the other quadrant every day, which sounds like they've got some spies hanging out over there.
Yeah, they do seem to be very well informed.
Right. Then the soldier leaves.
I think the Jem'Hadar, making a reference to Klingons and the Bat'lath, are making a signal to Sisko that they are very aware of the Federation side of the wormhole.
Right.
Even if Sisko has no idea who these people are, they seem to have a lot of information. He even makes like that veiled threat at the end, where he says they learn more and more every day.
Right. They've obviously been doing some reconnaissance.
Yes.
Which we haven't been doing any. We don't know anything about these guys.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing in this scene is also important is that even the Jem'Hadar on the other side of the galaxy can smell how much the Cardassian deal stinks.
Yeah, right? I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
He should have gone, ha ha. Well, Jake and Nog manage to beam up to the runabout. The computer finds Quark and Sisko on the surface, but can't beam them up. They try to get the runabout to fly them back to the station, but nothing works. First of all, they need an authorization code. Which, where was that in the episode Paradise when that idiot Vinod tried to send the runabout into the sun? Maybe they learned from that. Now they put a code on it.
You know the code's going to be guessable by pretty much anyone.
Probably.
Except these two.
Yeah, they didn't even try. Well, then the computer says a vessel from the surface is approaching, and Nog starts shouting, "Evasive maneuvers, fire phasers, launch torpedoes," as he panics.
Oh,
he says
wow.
all the words he knows.
Yeah, that falls under freaking out.
Oh, it was hilarious. But the good news is the ship warps away, taking no notice of them. Jake says he needs to figure out how to shut down the autopilot. He thinks he learned some things about that from Chief O'Brien, but this isn't going very well. Back on the station, we hear the Odyssey is now 8 hours away. That was the ship we talked about earlier. A small ship comes through the wormhole and won't answer hails. And then a Jem'Hadar soldier beams right into Ops. Miles calls for a level 3 containment field around him.
Did you notice Kira had already raised shields at that point?
Yep.
So he beamed through the shields.
Yeah.
That should be a little bit worrying.
Well, everybody from this other quadrant has just gone right through their shields.
Well, two that we know have.
They should have been looking into that already.
I don't know why the Jem'Hadar did that anyway. I mean, couldn't they have just hailed and said hi, and they would have been beamed straight into Ops?
I would have beamed him over anyway.
Oh, hi, guys.
Standard procedure. Come on over.
Yeah. You don't have any viruses, do you?
Well, yeah, after you beam him over, then you ask him. Well, the guy says he's third Talak Talan of the Jem'Hadar. He tells them Sisko is being detained for questioning by the Dominion. He will serve as an example for anyone who interferes with the Dominion. Kira asks what kind of interference he's talking about, and he says coming through the anomaly is interference enough. Unless you wish to continue offending the Dominion, I suggest you stay on your side of the galaxy. Dax says holding Commander Sisko isn't going to stop us from exploring the quadrant. The Jem'Hadar guy says we anticipated that response. And then he steps right through the containment field without injury, which is a very simple but terrifying move.
Doesn't even slow him down.
Nope. He hands a small pad to Kira and says, "This is a list of vessels we've destroyed for violating our territory." Kira recognizes the pad as Bajoran. The Jem'Hadar says he got it from the Bajoran colony on the other side. "You should be proud. I heard they fought well for a spiritual people." Then he says, "I hope we won't have to repeat this lesson," and he beams away.
Wow.
That was scary. Of course, they try to get a tractor beam on the ship, but it doesn't work, and they head back through the wormhole.
Yeah. So the implication here is they just wiped out the Bajoran colony.
God, the Bajorans can't catch a break.
They really can't. Kira did give him a look of someone who's about to rip his head off.
Yeah, but she was smart enough not to engage once he stepped through that containment field with no problem.
Yeah, I think she knows how to pick her fights.
Right.
So after he walked through the containment field, Miles calls for a security team. Why isn't there one permanently based in Ops, given everything that's happened?
Yeah, maybe from here there will be.
Yeah.
I mean, security is really close to Ops. It's just right by that elevator, but...
The elevator takes 10 minutes to get to the floor, so...
Right. Now we go back to Sisko, Quark, and Eris, and Sisko gets the collar around Eris's neck partially open, and he asks Quark to help pick the rest of the locks.
Shouldn't he have started getting Quark to open the lock?
It would have shut him up.
Yeah, and Quark's really good at that.
Well, Sisko tells Eris she can come with them back to the Alpha Quadrant and tell Starfleet all about the Dominion. She agrees to tell them everything she knows. Quark starts whining again, saying humans used to be like Ferengi, greedy, acquisitive, interested only in profit. We're a constant reminder of a past you'd like to forget. Humans used to be worse than Ferengi. Wars, concentration camps, slavery. He says we're nothing like you. We're better. Yeah. I found this whole speech really irritating. I mean, your treatment of women, at least as described so far, isn't exactly enlightened. They withhold education and freedom from them. So screw you, Ferengi. That's baloney.
But that's how the Ferengi see themselves.
Ugh,
this is
so
purely the
upsetting.
Ferengi view of it. The thing is, humans may have been like that in the past, but they have the ability to progress. The Ferengis seem to resist any kind of progression. They don't even want to really interact with other races.
Well, Sisko doesn't even say anything.
Yeah.
I found that maybe the most annoying part, because then it just made this speech annoying and pointless. Nobody ever says anything to the Ferengi. It's not like Quark is making an irrefutable argument here. He could have at least responded. It was really annoying. I didn't even get the point.
I think it was maybe to emphasize the Ferengi point of view that they just see themselves as superior. We're better than other races.
But how did it even fit into this scene?
I don't know.
Stupid.
Maybe Sisko had one of his speeches as a comeback and they cut it.
They cut the wrong speech.
Yeah. Sisko, after delivering that speech to Kai Wynn at the end of season 1, this would be a perfect example of him giving a speech to Quark about how you're stuck in the past.
Yeah, he had many opportunities to do that, but he doesn't do it at all. We go back on the runabout now, and Jake has taken a bunch of chips out of the computer and has them all over the floor, which this is not good.
Yeah, that does not look good.
No, and they do nearly blow the ship up at one point, of course. But Jake does manage to get the autopilot turned off, which apparently unlocks navigation. But when he says, fly us home again to the computer, it says, but the autopilot is not functional. So I don't know. This guy, he's not getting them anywhere.
I'm just going to point out, Jake doesn't want to be an engineer.
Right. Back at the station, the Odyssey has arrived. This is a Galaxy-class starship that looks a lot like the Enterprise.
Yeah, they get to reuse the model.
Captain Kehoe has arrived, and he does appear a bit full of himself. He says traffic through the wormhole will be suspended until we can investigate the Jem'Hadar's threat. Everyone wants to go along to help rescue Sisko, and Kehoe wonders if that's wise, since only Major Kira and Chief O'Brien have combat experience. Doesn't matter, everybody wants to go. Miles has already started equipping extra photons on the runabouts.
So where did they get the photon torpedoes from? I thought the Cardassians stole them all.
That's right. Well, maybe the Kehoe brought some. I don't know. Dax asks about offloading the non-essential people from the Odyssey before they go, which seems to have already been the plan. He says they're leaving in 3 hours. Kira looks very upset.
I thought the interaction between Dax and Kehoe was kind of funny. I saw her as deliberately having a dig at him.
With the question about evacuating the people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It seemed a little more playful. It seemed less serious.
It was a weird interaction because they made that point at the beginning that they didn't like each other. But then here he says something to her like, maybe you should serve on a starship instead of in a station. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic. I'm not sure what they were trying to accomplish because it didn't work. Whatever they were trying to do, it didn't make any impact on me.
I think I picked up more from it because that's what I do. I saw it as they were kind of ribbing each other, almost like friends do. Perhaps there was a running joke about, oh, he's arrogant, she's arrogant. The reality is they're actually sort of friends.
Could be. It wasn't clear.
Perhaps I'm reading too much into it.
Well, that's your job. Now we go to a dark corridor somewhere in the station, and Odo is giving some orders to the security team. He does say provisional government here in his little speech, so you can drink.
Drink.
Kira comes in to tell him they're leaving early and also to say he's not obligated to come along with them. His duties don't include this kind of a dangerous mission. But Odo says he figures while everyone else is looking out for Sisko and the boys, someone should be there to look out for Quark. She finds this a little strange, but he'd rather see Quark in jail than in the hands of the Dominion.
I think that's Odo's sense of duty coming through. Quark is effectively a civilian under Bajoran protection. So I see Odo's reaction as I should probably go along to help the civilian.
I also think to some degree they're trying to convince us that he and Quark really are friends. Or at least frenemies.
Yeah.
Although I don't think he would do the same thing if it were Garrick, for example.
Interesting. I disagree. I think he probably would.
Okay. Well, she heads to her runabout, but before she leaves, she says, Odo, keep your head down. And he says, you do the same. This was a cool scene, I thought.
Yeah.
Meaningful in how they interacted.
Well, I think it shows the repair from the Odo Noir episode.
Yep.
This shows we've come full circle and he is trusting her again, or they are friends again. They have that rapport.
Right.
And I think it's a simple way of doing it.
Yeah. We head through the wormhole now and we get an outside view of the Odyssey where we see how tiny the runabouts are by comparison.
Yes.
When they get through the wormhole, they're surprised that the Jem'Hadar is not there to greet them. We go back to the runabout with Jake and Nog, and Jake is flying around and trying to figure out how to control the ship, and it's not going very well. They're so relieved when the Odyssey and the other runabouts appear, and Chief O'Brien calls them. Miles beams over and sees all the chips on the floor. I don't know if you noticed that little look.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, you guys made a huge mess.
You've broken the shuttle. Good job, kids.
I imagine this to be the kind of thing that Miles has to clean up after a lot, where someone tries to take something apart and fix it, and they just make a big mess, and there's chips everywhere.
Well, that's because he never delegates anything.
Yeah, right.
With the Odyssey, though, the captain does say they're not picking anything up, but the Dominion could have cloaking tech. It seems like they should have thought about that before they were heading out.
Yeah, with only one ship.
Yeah.
I guess all they really had was a view of the one small Jem'Hadar ship that came through.
Yeah.
But they should have been more afraid based on how they just went right through their shields like butter.
Yes. Beamed through their shields.
Right.
Containment fields didn't work. They couldn't affect their transporter lock. They couldn't.
Well, but also they are out in the boonies, and this ship was already on its way there.
Yeah.
If they were going to wait for ships, they would have taken longer. Maybe they just assessed the risk and decided they needed to go after Sisko.
Classic Deep Space Nine plan. Straight power play.
Yep. Straight power play. Oh, man. Back down on the planet, Quark is interested in this collar on Eris, saying most telepathic suppressors he's seen are much bulkier. He figures there might be a market for them, so he's going to steal it. He gets it off her finally, and she jumps to her feet, summoning the blue light and dropping the field really quickly. When the Jem'Hadar soldier runs in, Sisko tackles him and takes his gun. He throws the gun at Quark, who then saves him from another attack, and then they all run out of the cave.
Possible small continuity issue here. When Sisko shoots the Jem'Hadar soldier, if you see him throw his hands up and fall backwards, he seems to have another gun in his hand.
Oh, in his hand?
Yeah.
I did not notice that.
I went and watched it a couple of times and went, I'm pretty sure he's got a gun there. So I assume must have carried multiples with him.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he had another one in his pocket. He had a big gun and a little gun.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Above the planet, the battle begins as the small Jem'Hadar ships approach. Kehoe gives Miles 10 minutes to find Sisko before heading to the wormhole. The Jem'Hadar ships are small, but they do a lot of damage to the Odyssey right away. Some kind of phased polaron beam is penetrating the shields.
These ships are going to be pretty tough. Only 3 of them are attacking.
Yep.
They're an interesting shape. They look very much like an insect. They sort of look like a cockroach. The way they have the purple back on them.
Lots of bug references in this episode.
Yeah, there really is. Well, there's some more purple there as well.
Yeah, that's true. Well, they're beating the snot out of the Odyssey, and the runabouts are trying to help, but this battle is not going well.
I do love this stuff. The space effects are great.
Down on the planet, Sisko, Quark, and Eris are running through the woods. Quark is tired and wants to rest. Eris is again ready to leave him behind, which I love.
Completely fair.
Sisko says, we aren't going to leave him behind. We wouldn't have gotten away from the Jem'Hadar without him. And Quark is like, thank you, which is funny.
I'm hearing Kim at this point saying, yes, excellent idea. Leave him here.
Yeah, just leave him.
He can be a gift for the Dominion.
We might come back for you. Well, just then, they get beamed up to the runabout. Sisko hugs Jake and tells him, well done. Quark tells Nog he's never going on a field trip again.
Not into the Gamma Quadrant. Not a good idea.
Yeah. The last time they went on a field trip to the Gamma Quadrant, they lost Kaiopaka. I mean, they are not careful enough.
No.
They are just too cavalier about this place. The battles are continuing as the runabouts are now getting the crap beaten out of them, too. The views of the view screen, like when you're looking from behind and they're flying around and really leaning to the right and leaning to the left, it was very much like a video game. It was very cool.
Yes.
Everyone decides it's time to head back to the wormhole and retreat. But one of the Jem'Hadar ships does a suicide attack, flying into the center of the Odyssey and completely destroys it.
Nice effect. I mean, the whole ship goes up.
I don't know. Maybe I am emotionally compromised from the pandemic. I mean, it has been very hard on all of us, but I cried out when that happened. I was very upset and just shocked. The way they did the sort of bright light into the remaining runabouts, and then all you saw was it fading on their faces. It was very impactful. The first time I saw this, I had missed that earlier comment about them getting the non-essential personnel off the ship, and maybe that's why it impacted me so much, because then later they make a point, or later when I watched it, I realized they made a point of telling you there were fewer people on that ship. But to me, that was like destroying the Enterprise with all those people on it. I was very upset by this scene.
I remember this when watching the original show. That scene where it crashes into the main deflector and just explodes. I remember watching this and literally it was, whoa.
No, it was upsetting.
Wow.
Well, and plus Miles says we were retreating. There was no need for that.
Yeah.
Which is right. But Sisko's like, well, they're showing us how far they're willing to go. They're really trying to scare us.
Yeah.
Well, they all set course for the wormhole to get the heck out of there.
The shot of Kira looking surprised at the destruction of the ship, I thought was just such a really nice touch, though, in this scene. She didn't seem shocked. She had this, resigned look, I thought. Again, maybe me reading too much into it. I thought she looked like someone who'd seen real combat. That this was not shocking to her. This is something that you see. Comrades are killed. People die. It's just part of it. You don't like it, but it's just happened.
Yeah.
And I thought that seemed to be the impression I was getting from her.
That's interesting. I didn't really read that, I guess, I was looking at it like they were just showing her face so that they could do that effect of the bright light and then the fading. But it would make sense that she would be the person who would be maybe the least surprised by the whole thing, but also maybe the most emotionally upset about it because she's like, here's another thing.
Yeah. Well, it's something she's lived her whole life with.
Exactly. And she's already quite compromised from hearing what happened to the Bajoran colony.
Yeah. And she's just getting away from it. And now this is happening.
Right.
If you like, she's been dragged back in.
Yeah. Very rough. But we go back to the station. And when we are disembarking from the runabout, Quark pulls Sisko aside and says, we need to talk.
Never take me camping again.
Right. In Ops, Eris comes in saying she can't believe she's on the other side of the galaxy. And everyone is just kind of staring at her when Sisko comes up the other elevator with his phaser drawn, telling everyone to move away from her.
If you notice, there's also another guy behind Sisko holding a phaser as well.
Another security guy?
Yeah, I assume this is the security guy who was supposed to be in Ops.
Maybe. Well, Quark learned that the collar was a ruse. It was just a lock and had no other tech in it. Sisko says the Jem'Hadar obviously wanted us to escape all along and bring her back here so she could spy on the Federation. Well done, Commander, she says.
So this ties back to that comment he made earlier that this is much smaller than the suppression collars he'd seen.
Right, exactly. He asks if she's one of the founders, and she says, do you think the founders would waste their time with you? When Odo steps in to arrest her, she says, you have no idea what's begun here, and she presses a button on her arm and beams away. They can't find her anywhere on the station, and there's no ship nearby. Kira says, she'll be back.
The question is, who'll she bring with her? I like that.
Yeah.
Kira's a realist here.
And Sisko says, if the Dominion comes through the wormhole, the first battle will be fought here, and I intend to be ready for them.
Oh, he's in full Sisko, quiet, serious mode.
Well, some scary stuff that just happened.
It was great.
Yeah, it was good. Well, that is the end of the episode. So what do you have for overanalysis?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing is really an observation. This is following a theme in Star Trek where they introduce a new enemy, and initially that enemy is absolutely overwhelmingly strong. And I'm thinking about when they introduced the Borg, the same thing here. Shields mean nothing to them. Their weapons can break them. 3 ships can take on a Galaxy-class starship and just destroy it.
Yep.
That I like because this is, you watch it and it's such a piece of Star Trek of we introduce an enemy and they are so strong. It's like, yeah, it's all over, guys.
Yeah, they do definitely want to scare you right away with stuff like that. At the same time, they gave us all these clues.
Yeah.
That they've been studying them for a long time, right? The Jem'Hadar had been studying the other side of the wormhole for a long time. So they had extra info. Like they might have had spies in Starfleet. They might know all about the shields, and that's why they were able to shoot through them so easily. So they've got a bit of a head start at the very least. But yeah, this was a very scary introduction of these people. I have heard the name Jem'Hadar before. I don't know. Who knows? I talk to Star Trek people all the time, and people have said it to me before. And I may have even seen what they look like, but I've never seen an episode with them in it. And they are scary.
Yeah, it's a fantastic look. I'm pretty sure you've seen them cosplayed at Comic-Con as well.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
You see it, but you see a lot of stuff at Comic-Con. It could be anything.
Yeah. And I read that the writers wanted a Galaxy-class ship to be destroyed just to re-emphasize how strong they were. I thought that was, again, a really interesting part of the story.
Well, it was effective. It got my attention.
Oh, absolutely. Next thing. So, I don't know if this is strategic or tactical, but again, planning issues, plans people. So, your enemy is able to undermine your shields, go straight through them. Suppression fields mean nothing. You can't use tractor beams. They clearly have a major advantage over you. And you don't take any steps or do any planning when you go through the wormhole, perhaps to counteract that. Or we don't see any of that. And your plan is we're just going to go through and investigate. It seems a little dangerous.
Yeah.
It seems a little asking for trouble. You're not even doing initial recon of why aren't you setting the shuttles through, send some probes through, start looking and seeing what you can find. But we send a starship through knowing that it's at a disadvantage. In theory, they can beam through shields. You turn up in the Alpha Quadrant, you raise your shields, they beam weapons on board, or they beam a boarding party on board and seize your ship.
Right.
Does not seem to be thought through. I think that's a tactical failure.
It seemed a little arrogant, and I wondered if that was sort of the point of them telling us that Kehoe was full of himself.
That's a really good take. I hadn't thought of that.
Because would Sisko have done that same thing, or would he have been more cautious? That's the question. We don't know, but that is the question.
I think Sisko would have been much more softly. He would have probably used the shuttles, or even used civilian craft. Well, maybe not civilian, but I don't think he would have tried the show of force. We haven't seen him typically do that.
What is this softly? What is that?
Oh, it means very cautious. Probably an English phrase.
I'm not familiar with this phrase.
Oh, okay. It means don't go in there all guns blazing.
Well, straight power play.
Yeah, the opposite of a straight power play. But that was a known situation to a large extent.
Well, it was much smaller. Yeah, it was a much smaller situation.
So, okay, I see your point there. That's a great take on it of this was playing on the arrogance. I mean, to an extent, perhaps playing on the arrogance of Starfleet. Why would we have a problem?
Except the Borg.
Yeah. Well, even by this point, they kind of dealt with the Borg. Actually, no, they really hadn't.
No.
You're right.
Not really.
They're dealing with the Borg.
Only Janeway gets the upper hand.
Must have been something you assimilated.
Great all-time Star Trek lines.
Oh, yeah. So that's my take on the Odyssey. And, well, not to harp on a point, but even the Dominion think the treaty with the Cardassians is bad. It's terrible.
Well, if they are truly spying on this side of the wormhole, they've probably been in the neutral zone and they've probably heard the complaints and they're probably aware of it. And also, it's not the kind of treaty that they would enter into. So they're going to use that as a weapon, to sort of poke fun at you.
Oh, yeah. Their kind of treaty is, we invaded the Cardassians and have now made them part of the Dominion. The Cardassians are all happy.
Bad guys are so scary in TV shows and movies when they're smart and strong.
Yes.
Fortunately, that's not usually how it goes in real life. You're usually either one or the other. But these guys were scary.
Yeah.
If they're the muscle, and yet they seem to be smart enough to destroy that ship really easily, then again, I suppose they could have been taking orders from someone else. Yeah.
From the founders.
From the founders or Eris, whatever she is.
So next thing. Now, Eris, when she's talking to when they're all talking to the Jem'Hadar, says the founders are a myth. Do you think she was trying to convince Sisko that the founders aren't real? Was there anything to that, or was that just part of her trying to maintain her cover?
Well, yeah, that was very strange, because even if you're trying to maintain your cover, what is the point of that? Well, okay, wait, let me back up a second, because there might have been a long game that she was going to play with that, but she got caught a lot quicker than she anticipated.
Right.
So I guess I don't know enough yet about this person and her race and how they are related to the founders. And I only know who the founders are, again, anecdotally. I've not watched episodes about them. I don't know. Well, I know who they are, but I don't know much about them.
And from this, they're the people who run the Dominion. And she makes the claim that they're a myth. I think you're right, that this was a longer game that was going to be played.
Right.
And perhaps play this part of it of the founders aren't actually real.
Right.
But of course, when they figure out that she's a plant or a mole and she says the founders wouldn't waste their time, I think that kind of confirms, oh, well, they are real.
True. Well, she does say, do you think the founders would waste their time with you or whatever? So, yeah. Now we know they're real.
Well, I think the answer to that is, well, if they're going to this much effort, they clearly do think that.
Somebody did.
And my final thing.
Yeah.
I assumed they left Jake and Nog alone because they were irrelevant to the overall plan. That the idea was they wanted them to escape, ultimately. So Jake and Nog and the shuttle were left intact and they didn't make any move against it.
Right. They wanted Eris and Sisko and Quark to escape. Mostly they wanted Eris, right, to get on the shuttle with him and go back through the wormhole and then do whatever it is she was going to do. So yeah, they couldn't destroy that shuttle. Whether or not Jake was on there, I think made no difference.
Because from that, I assumed that the Odyssey coming through the wormhole and the other shuttles and this whole rescue mission was not the intention, that perhaps the founders and the Jem'Hadar expected there to be a longer time window.
Maybe.
And that Sisko and Quark and Eris would have escaped by that point and got back home.
Right.
Even though they showed how powerful the Dominion were and what their weaponry was, maybe that actually was tipping their hand. The original plan did not involve destroying or even fighting the Federation, fighting Starfleet.
That could be. We don't really know enough about it, but it is surprising that they didn't have anybody stationed by the edge of the wormhole or the Gamma Quadrant side of the wormhole.
Yeah.
Unless they were expecting them to come through and them just to leave them. Then again, I suppose they don't really care about who comes through. They just care about their so-called territory being invaded.
It does seem kind of odd, but at the same time, I'm fairly sure the founders probably balanced the growing influence from the Alpha Quadrant against their best interests and decided it was time to move at this point.
Well, I think once they saw a colony being built, they were like, nope.
Yeah.
One step too far.
Yeah.
Like you send your stupid Ferengi over trying to sell Tulaberry wine. That's one thing. But then you try moving in. That's something else.
Yeah. Okay, so I think ultimately we should blame the Ferengi.
Sure.
It's all their fault.
But we won't do anything about it.
Write a strongly worded letter to the Nagus.
Dear Nagus. What else you got?
Well, that wraps it up for me.
Okay. If we go to women in the future, I don't have a lot to say. This wasn't exactly an episode with a lot of female characters in it. Yes, we had Eris.
Bit of a boys' club.
But there wasn't really much to Eris. She played a victim and it worked, and then she fooled them and that worked, whatever. But she wasn't really that interesting. And we had very little from Kira, except for what you talked about with her extreme reaction to what had happened and also her being impacted by what had happened to the Bajoran colony.
Yeah.
And we had that weird interaction with Dax and Kehoe that made no sense. I have no idea what message they were trying to give me there. So I don't really have much to say about women in the future. I'm just happy there was not really any sexual harassment. So that's a win. But other than that, I don't really have anything.
Well, there was the small interaction between Odo and Kira. That was nice.
Yeah, that was good character development there, but nothing really specific about women.
I think it just showed that that relationship had been repaired or had recovered from Odo's realization.
Well, it certainly seems like that relationship is important.
Yeah.
I don't know why yet. I'm a little worried about what they're hinting at. I will say that, but I don't know where this is going because it kind of alters back and forth between it being almost like a sibling kind of relationship and then Odo being a little bit impacted when she seems to be in love, like with Barial.
Yeah.
Because he seemed a little bit wounded by that. But this scene between them was very nice. I appreciated the development there, really from both of them.
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. I think I know your rating, but what is it?
This is actually a complex one for me.
Okay.
It is a thumbs up for the introduction to the Jem'Hadar and the space battles and the progression of the story, bringing in the Dominion and getting building that background of what they're facing and what's going to happen in the future. But it is so much a thumbs down for the Griswold's camping expedition side of this episode, which I thought was just really lame.
That's funny.
So even though it's thumbs up, there are some thumbs down elements to this episode.
Yeah, I give it a thumbs up. It wasn't quite what I thought it was going to be, I guess, but I still did think it was a pretty good episode. I was not at all bothered by the camping thing.
Yeah.
Every now and then when there's some goofy thing that happens, like way back in the beginning of the season in episode 2, where there was that whole thing, or was it episode 1? Where there was, no, it was 2, where there was that whole thing with Kira leaving the station when Lee Nallis was taking over, and you just really didn't like that because you thought it was sort of too goofy. And I loved that. I thought that was great. So every now and then those little goofy things you don't like and I like, but that actually didn't bother me. I didn't really particularly dislike it or particularly like it. What I got from it was that Nog is trying. He's trying to make a better impression on Sisko, and he's trying to be a better friend to Jake. And I got that from that scene, so I appreciated that.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't like any of the Quark stuff. And not just because I don't like Quark, but I didn't like that he made a couple of little speeches about how the Ferengi are looked down on by the humans. And Sisko didn't say anything. That's really obnoxious to me. It's like, stand up for yourself, or at least you need to try to convince him of something. You need to tell him something. Why do you just let him preach at you? I don't know. I didn't like that.
Yeah, it doesn't work terribly well, yeah.
Yeah, but the camping itself, that didn't bother me.
Really, I felt that was just like a bad 90s sitcom. It could have been an episode of Alf up until that point.
Well, that woman might have been in it. Maybe she was in Alf. I don't remember.
I have not looked that one up.
She might have been. She was in a lot of stuff.
Oh, yes. She was in the 2 Alf Christmas specials.
Oh, there was an Alf Christmas special.
What's scary is there was 2 of them.
Oh, wow. I am not familiar really with the Alf show.
Yes.
Which is how it's going to stay.
It's for the best.
The other thing I really liked in this episode, this is a weird thing to say, but the space battle, not so much the battle, I guess that I could take or leave that, but when they blew up that ship, the Odyssey, I was deeply impacted by it.
Yeah.
And I really like it when Star Trek moves me.
Yeah.
Then I'm invested. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I really cared about that happening, and that makes me nervous for the future. But that was good.
Well, you have such a background in TNG. That's a Galaxy-class ship just being destroyed.
And it wasn't just that. I mean, it was just so surprising that the entire ship was destroyed. And like I said, the first time I watched it, I thought the whole crew was on there. And I was just like, oh, man, that's terrible. But, this is all new territory for me with DS9. So I don't really know where we're going. But this does not seem good. It seems really bad.
That was a season finale.
Yes, that is a shocker for sure. All right. Well, I think that is it for season 2, episode 26.
Indeed.
Come back next week for the season 2 wrap-up episode, where we will read some of the things we got in our mailbag, and we will also do some ratings of the best and worst of the season, like we did at the end of season 1.
Absolutely.
And then after that, we'll take a little break because this is hard work, and then we will come back with season 3 a few weeks after.
Indeed. We will be back with another season of Rebinge It.
I can't believe we're already up to season 3. It's crazy.
I know. I'm amazed that you've managed to watch it so far. I'm just impressed. And happy.
Well, I appreciate having new Star Trek to watch. At this point, we're a few weeks ahead of what we're releasing with what we're recording.
Yeah.
And all of the other Star Trek shows now are done. So Picard is done. Discovery is done. Lower Decks is done. So this is my only new Star Trek now. So we're going to keep watching it.
Yeah, we need some more Star Trek content. That's
Well,
the problem.
Don't get too much. But this is new Star Trek to me. So I'm happy to keep watching it as long as we keep the sexual harassment toned down. I'm okay. If that kept going, you can forget it. Well, this would not have worked. We would not have kept going if every episode was Bashir harassing the women.
Well, Bashir is improving.
He is. All right. That's the end of this episode.
And of season 2.
So if you would like to tell us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, please email us at rebingeit@gmail.com or tweet us at rebingeit. Also, check us out on talkthroughmedia.com. You can leave feedback for us there on individual episodes, and you can listen to all of our other awesome podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.